Shalom Aleichem and welcome to Machal Le'Roa Online Smicha. There is a very interesting halacha that's pretty controversial, and it's so important in Yiddishkeit that from all the issues that we have in our life, the Chachamim felt it was so important that they added a bracha, they inserted a bracha in the Shemoneh Esrei. We know the Shemoneh Esrei is 18, it's supposed to be 18 brachas, but when you count, it's really 19. Because there was a bracha added, V'la malshinim al tihi sikva. Now, the main gist of the bracha of V'la malshinim al tihi sikva really was more about the heretics, the apikorsim, who were ruining it for the Yiddish people. But in that bracha, they inserted all other troublemakers amongst Klal Yisrael. And the first one they put on the list eventually was V'la malshinim, those who tattletale, those who report, who report to authorities, to Goyish authorities, and don't go to Yiddish authorities and report something negative about another Yid, al tihi sikva. We daven they should have no hope, and we have to try to get rid of them. We have to eliminate those malshinim. In other words, it's a very powerful halacha that a person who does an act or has a job, as we'll soon see, that part of his job could be a form of mesira, we daven al tihi sikva. Now, I have to tell you that the dinim of Mesira is not all over the place in Shulchan Aruch or Sifrei Halacha, but a couple of places where it's written, it's pretty powerful. Besides what I just said about mentioning in Shemoneh Esrei, the opening statement, V'la malshinim al tihi sikva. In Choshen Mishpat, it's Siman Shin Pei Ches. The Alter Rebbe speaks about in this Kei Mamein, the Rambam in Hilchos Chayvo Perek Ches. And just to show you how harsh this malshin, this informer is, that they all say that the Gemara says Ein lo chelik le'olam haba. First of all, if a person does an act of halshana, reporting a yid to Goyish authority, he has no part in the world to come. In many ways, he is looked at halachically like a mumar lahachis. A mumar lahachis, a lot of halachis that we disqualify him. Malshin is his shchita is pasul. A malshin, he writes a Sefer Torah is pasul. A malshin, when the Shulchan Aruch lists off who is trusted to be an aid, a witness, who could we take his word, if he makes a shvur, we will accept it. A malshin is disqualified. And so much so, Rabbi Isai, that the Shulchan Aruch says if nobody's watching and the yid won't get hurt, a malshin is one you're allowed to kill. You're allowed to kill a malshin, to get rid of what he stands for. You're allowed to kill him. What's the cheshbon? What's the logic? Since when is a yid allowed to kill? So the din is, because most of the poskim, as the chinuch says, that the din of a malshin is attributed to a roidif. What's a roidif? If you're witnessing Reuven chasing Shimon and with a gun, he's about to kill him, or Reuven's chasing Shimon himself, and you're Shimon. Obviously, to save yourself, you could save your own life or save another person's life. If there's no other way, you could save him by killing Reuven. So this guy who's serving as a malshin, he has a din of a roidif, and we'll talk about soon why does he have a roidif. And because he has a din of a roidif, you're allowed to save the situation by killing him, just like you're allowed to kill a roidif. So you see how bad it is. Now, there's a story in the Gemara. This story is in Bava Metzia Daf Pei Gimel Amid Beis. The Gemara says like this: Rabbi Elazar bar Rab Shimon ashkach lahu paragvavna. Rabbi Elazar bar Rab Shimon came across a certain marshal, a certain person who was serving as an official, the katafis gamvi. His job was that they hired him to chap the ganavim. There's too many ganavas going on. You're in charge to chap the ganavim. So Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon, he was a Jewish fellow. So Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon sees him in the street, and Mazel Tov on his new job, and he says, Amalei, Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon tells him, excuse me, how do you do your job? How do you manage to find who the Ganavim are? Lav kechivsim esili, aren't they likened to beasts that they hide? Where are you going to find? What are you going to put up a sign? All the Ganavim come to me, and I'm going to show up. How do you do your job? And he basically said, Dilma shakal tzadiki v'shavak rishi. Maybe the people that you're going to put in handcuffs are going to be the right. Sometimes you might be in luck and you caught the Ganav, and sometimes you're taking the wrong person. You're taking a righteous person and you're putting him in jail. So he turns around and asks Rabbi Elazar, so what should I do? Give me advice. How should I do my job? So Rabbi Elazar says a very interesting thing. He says, let me teach you how to do your job. The 4th hour of the day in the morning, go to the store. And now, who's going to be up then? When you see somebody who's drinking wine, and he's holding another cup of wine in his hand, and he is dozing off, inquire about him. Ask, why is he tired? Is he a Talmid Chacham? And that's why he's falling asleep. And he's falling asleep. And you know why he's falling asleep? He was up all night learning. And if he's a worker, his job, he had a job at night that caused him to be very tired. And he tells him, but if you could see that the guy is really unemployed and he's tired early morning, this guy must have been out there doing all the stealing. And therefore, that would be the sign of who the Ganav is. The king heard the advice of Rabbi Elazar said, and the king says to Rabbi Elazar, the reader of the letter, you should be the deliverer. In other words, Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon, you should put this into practice. Ashul Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon. So they brought Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon, and they authorized him to be the new chief in town. V'katafis gamvi va'azul, and he started making us say that he caught the Ganavim, and they put away the Ganavim. So Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon was the new sheriff in town. Shalach le Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha. So Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha sent him a letter and bawled him out, and it says, Ad masai atamoiser amay shel Elokeinu lahariga. How are you allowing yourself to do this job when you're giving away some of our people to be killed? Some of our people to be killed. In other words, and the story goes on a little, the conversation between Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha and Rabbi Elazar, but the fact is that Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha felt that even though he was hired to get rid of the mess, the trash, the Ganavim, if the Ganav was a Jew and Rabbi Elazar caught him and Rabbi Elazar put him in jail, he felt that was the wrong thing to do. You're giving away another Yid lahariga. Now, what's the logic to that? The guy is a Ganav. The guy could be doing terrible things. So the logic to that is like this. You always have to know to split the issues. There are financial matters, and then there are life and death matters. Again, when I'm talking about who to report, this is completely a different category. Where the Rambam says there are two types of Muslims. Somebody's Meiser Guf, somebody who's actually giving a body away. He's locking him up, he's killing him, or somebody's just doing financial damage. So you have to be able to split there. And exactly what the person is doing wrong, it also depends. Is he manuvel? He does things with little kids, and that's Isurim, then it could ruin them for life. He's taking them and killing them. But then there's another situation where a person's only causing financial problems, financial loss for people. So the question is, why did Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha feel that to lock up a Ganav, you're killing him? And the answer is, because this is actually the debate. When you put somebody into prison, from one hand, what's going to happen in prison? What's going to happen in prison, he's going to get a sentence until he comes up with the money or whatever he stole and gave it back. But while he's in prison, it could be that the Mishagayim that hang out there, it's very dangerous. One leads to the next. And once a person becomes trigger happy and steals, he could kill. And a person in prison is also dangerous. So you're putting him in a situation of ariga. What he did was a financial matter. So we have to figure out how he pays the bill. You're putting him into a cell with lowlife so he can end up getting killed. That's point number one. Point number two is, even if you're telling me that okay, the system and the jails are not that bad, but there's another issue. A guilty verdict in the Goyish court is completely different than a guilty verdict in the Havdon Yiddish court. We have our Torah, we have the ways we follow when a person is found guilty or not. It could very well be that in court, the secular system will find him guilty, and you'll make him pay, and you'll make him stay there forever. And Al Pi Torah, you're putting him in a position where you not necessarily have to be. So therefore, Rabbi Yeshua ben Karach felt by locking up a ganiv, you're a raidif, you're a killer. Others challenge it. So the question Lepoyo becomes like this: if you know somebody is doing something that's not legal financially, if you report now, again, I'm completely not talking about somebody who's dealing with schmutz, somebody who's doing those crazy things. I'm talking about a financial matter, or let's even say very similar to that story in the Gemara, somebody who has a job, he works for the government. This is Shuvas from Rabbi Moshe Weinstein, the Shuvas from Rabbi Shmuel Vosner. If a person is an auditor, he's a tax auditor. If he's a tax auditor and he finds out that Yankel didn't pay tax, and then he gives Yankel a bill of tax, and Yankel doesn't pay, and he ends up in jail, based on his report, if he's an accountant and all that, are you allowed to do that job? Because it's a trickle-down effect that your job is going to end up that if you're going to report to the Yid, even if you're doing it indirectly, the Yid might end up going to jail. So there's a combination of many, many issues that come up here. Is going to jail today similar to going to jail what the Gemara speaks about? And that is that it's very dangerous. It doesn't only stop at a financial matter. It becomes a life and death matter. It's Hailach Hariga, or maybe today the system over there is better. I don't think so, but maybe today the system and nobody gets killed in jails if you go to a civilized jail, if you could say that word. From the other hand, it's still a financial matter. This is actually a machlekes between the Rosh and the Mordechai. Why are you allowed to go so harsh against a Malshin? The Rosh says that a Malshin begins slowly, and then eventually it causes life and death issues. The Mordechai says, no. I'm going to punish him because he's a mazik, because he's giving away another person's money to the Goyish system. A mazik you're not allowed to kill. You're only allowed to kill a Reitzeach. Why this mazik you're allowed to kill? Because this mazik is different. He's not just ruining it from the Yid. He's in a mode of taking Jewish money and giving it away to the non-Jews. That's worse. That type of mazik you're allowed to kill. This is the Mordechai's opinion. One of the differences between the Rosh and the Mordechai is whether if a guy says if he gives away the money, he makes the money go away to the guy, but the guy doesn't keep it. The guy right away destroys it or gets rid of it. So the Erech Shai in Simon Shin Pei says that according to the Mordechai, if the guy shows take the Jew's money and burn it, or and the guy never took the money, it wouldn't be a din of a mazik. However, according to the Rosh, it would still be. So what's the bottom line? The bottom line is like this. There are many discussions. I told you, Shmuel, one of the questions that came up not too long ago in Israel was that there was a competing elections. Obviously, there were different teams, and one of the teams was about to lose, but he felt it was unfair for him to lose because he knew that his opponent was cheating in the elections. So now the question became, could he report their opponent's cheating to the election board? So it should be fair. But to report him, that guy will be sitting in jail. You're basically going to put him in jail. Is that a din of emulsion? So based on everything I said, especially today's days where it's not where the system, the judgment system is more civil, and the Aruch HaShulchan talks about it, and many other Paiskim talk about it, because it's much more civil, the outcome is not going to be the same. It's not going to be as harsh as it was. And on top of that, possibly you could add another sniff. This situation happened in Israel. So you're not reporting him to secular courts, Goyish secular courts. To report a Yid to a Yiddish secular court is not as bad. And that's why, in that situation, some of the Rabbanim Paskin, that he was allowed to report that the person was cheating on the elections. The same is, there's a tshuva from Rav Moshe Feinstein, in Choshen Mishpat Chelik Aleph Siman Tzadik Beis, that if you are an accountant or you are working for the government and you see that the taxes are off, and Rav Moshe Feinstein says like this: Kivun de be'etzim, hare kol mi sheyir roya cheshbonis yimatzis apshia. Since if it's not him that's going to find the problem, somebody else is going to find a problem. So nimtza shalayavshid apesheya yoser. So the person who he's reporting, who gets reported when I do the summary, that person is not losing any more because of me than if it would have been somebody else. So therefore, a Moshe paskin to that person that you could become a accountant for the government, and the only thing is that you have to try to avoid whatever extra fines there could be.